There's a body of water from which the cry of distress comes more often per square mile than any other body of water in the world. It is not the Devil's Sea off Japan, the tumultuous waters of Cape Horn, nor the deadly calm of the Sargasso Sea. It is an area where the search and rescue capabilities have no equal. Not the Bermuda Triangle, but another triangle. A triangle formed by the Great Lakes, locked in the heart of industrial North America. Too often, the crack search and rescue units of Canada and the United States come back empty-handed. A ship or a plane vanished for no apparent reason or destroyed by forces no one can explain. An extraordinary statistic has been recently disclosed. Fully 1/3 of all the unsolved American air and sea disasters take place in the Great Lakes Triangle. The man who has accumulated and assessed the data that has led him to designate the Great Lakes as perhaps the greatest disaster area in the world is J. Leland Gourlay. Jay Gourlay is not only an experienced author and journalist, he is also a highly qualified professional flying instructor.
I've flown thousands of miles through the Bermuda Triangle, and I've been out of radio contact with anyone there for as much as an hour at a time. It's much easier to understand how someone could disappear in a vast expanse of ocean like that than here, where you can see Canada off our right wingtip and the United States off our left wingtip. I can overfly this lake in less than 10 minutes. No one is ever out of radio contact here. We can communicate with at least 100 different government employees in the United States and Canada right now. It's inconceivable that anyone could disappear here.
And yet, disappear they do, and under circumstances of mystery. 50-mile-an-hour headwinds that no one else feels, dangers that come so suddenly the victim never even cries for help. In terms of the sheer magnitude of tragedy, Gourlay has discovered that the Great Lakes surpass the so-called Bermuda Triangle. And the Bermuda Triangle covers some 1.5 million square miles, 16 times the size of the 5 Great Lakes combined. These are not strange remote waters or vast stretches of ocean. These are completely enclosed freshwater pools, the playground of Middle America. On the shores of the Great Lakes stand the great American cities of Chicago, Detroit, Buffalo, and Cleveland. Piercing the sky over Toronto, on the shores of Lake Ontario, the highest man-made structure in the world. The CN Tower stands as the ultimate pinnacle of highly sophisticated communications technology.
Victor 98,
Traffic controllers urge pilots flying the lakes to report continuously to ground stations. A 10-second lapse will launch full-scale search and rescue. And yet, the fact remains that there is high incidence of inexplicable disaster. Jay Gourlay assiduously follows up any clue, any lead which may shed light on the mysterious tragedies. He has pursued high government officials in Washington and Ottawa, interviewed the men on the spot, the highly skilled search teams operated by the police and the coast guards of 2 nations. He has spent days at the marinas to discuss the weather peculiarities with yachtsmen whose lives depend on their knowledge.
What's the worst thing that can happen in a situation like that?
He has fed his voluminous documentation gathered over 2 years into the highly sophisticated computer banks at such electronics nerve centers as the University of Toronto, searching for patterns, searching for correlations, searching for explanations.
Stop it right there if you would. Oh, that's the accident I was telling you about just off Milwaukee. That aircraft was at en route altitudes. It was talking to air traffic control. It was a clear day, very calm. The aircraft disappeared from radar from an altitude of about 5,000 feet. No trace of that airplane or anyone aboard it has ever been found to this day.
And finally, not dry data, but flesh and blood. Eyewitnesses who survived to describe their bewilderment. Such a man is Robert Joy Jr. of Michigan, a policeman, a pilot, and a professor of criminology. On April 23rd, 1973, Bob watched his father vanish. His father was flying a safe, well-equipped amphibious aircraft.
Is there any difference between this airplane and the airplane your father disappeared in?
No, it's exactly the same type airplane.
Bob Joy was in another plane a few hundred feet away. They were over shallow Lake Erie. The water was not rough. There was no cry for help.
I got a radio message from my dad, and I couldn't understand what he said. The frequency that we were on was 122.8, the Unicom frequency. It was very congested. So I looked back out the right side of the airplane, and I didn't see the lake amphibian at all. It had been there right along through the whole trip.
No trace of the lake amphibian was ever found.
It disappeared completely.
The disappearances of small aircraft are hard enough to explain. The strange disasters of the great Laker boats are perhaps even more mystifying. These are ships that are built for lakes, never far from shore, massively equipped with every conceivable safety and communications device. When the Edmund Fitzgerald was launched, it was the largest of the great Laker boats. When she sailed from Duluth, Minnesota on November 9, 1975, she too was sailing safely in tandem with another Laker, the Arthur M. Anderson. They easily weathered a mild storm, but to be safe, the Fitzgerald checked her speed to close the distance between her and the Anderson. A snow flurry obscured their view briefly, but the radar told the Anderson that the Fitzgerald was less than 9 miles ahead. When the flurry lifted, the Anderson could see for 20 miles, but there was no Fitzgerald. She'd gone with a sudden convulsion to the bottom with all hands. When the wreckage was found, it was discovered that every lifeboat was still securely fastened.